This video is all about processed foods. There's a lot of confusion on what exactly processed foods are. I'm here to actually set the record straight and also give you guys all of the categories, because yes, there are actually categories for processed foods. There are 4 categories of processed foods. So there are different levels of foods that are processed. Processed could actually mean just chopping up some fruits and veggies and putting them in a package and selling them at the grocery store. This would be quite different from going to a fast food restaurant and getting a hamburger meal with French fries, a hamburger, and a milkshake. Minimally processed foods. Minimally processed foods are whole foods that have undergone minimal processing or alteration from their natural state. These foods are typically fresh, nutrient dense, and contain minimal additives or preservatives. Some examples would be heading over to the grocery store and looking at your produce section and choosing the apple that has been chopped up for you, already washed, and then packaged in a container. Now, clearly, the difference between a fresh apple versus an already cut up apple in a container, there is going to be a little bit of processing. And you can definitely tell that because as soon as you cut open an apple, the oxidation process kicks in and it's gonna start turning brown. So in order to make it more appealing, the company has to add a little bit of preservatives in order to retain that pretty color. Minimally processed foods can undergo washing, cutting, and packaging for convenience. They are still considered whole foods, so they still retain their nutritional value. These type of foods retain nutrients like fiber content, mineral content, and vitamins, which are important for maintaining good health. In this minimally processed category can also include grains. These are grains that have not been stripped or refined. An example of this would be brown rice. Since you're not in the field getting your own rice, there is a little bit of packaging and preparing going on, but it's not stripped of its nutrients. Other examples would be quinoa, oats, and barley. More minimally processed foods are nuts and seeds. These are whole food sources that contain protein, fats, and even fiber. Some examples would be walnuts in their whole food state, almonds, chia seeds, and even flax seeds. Minimally processed meats would be meats that have no additives or preservatives. This would include fresh chicken, beef, pork, and fish. And these are considered minimally processed because we're not actually going out fishing for salmon. We're relying on a company to package it for us. Eggs are another source that could be minimally processed, and these are eggs obviously that have been already collected, they've been washed, and they've been packaged. So this is gonna be a very small amount of processing. Legumes are another minimally processed food, so they're just harvested and they're in their whole food form. So they're just packaged and sold at the grocery store. So that could include things like black beans, lentils, kidney beans, chickpeas, and so on. Herbs and spices can also be minimally processed as well. Examples would be basil, oregano, turmeric, cinnamon. These are things that have already been harvested, but there's no preservatives added into the packaging. The second category is processed culinary ingredients. These are items that have been modified and altered from their natural state in order to make it more convenient. The reason why this is done is because it's a little bit more convenient to use it in cooking and baking. This could include sugar. Sugar is typically processed by sugarcane or sugar beets. The flour we get at the grocery store, and yes, even the 100% whole wheat flour is processed. Grinding wheat, corn, and flour are considered a process. Now, of course, white flour versus whole wheat flour, there's a little bit of a variation there because with white flour, they actually completely strip all of the outer layers, anything that is pretty much healthy to us. Salt is another processed culinary ingredient. This is typically mined from underground salt deposits. Processed culinary ingredients also include oils, fats that are extracted from plants like soybean, corn, and olives. Vinegar is another culinary ingredient as well. Baking powder and baking soda, which are leavening agents that we commonly use for breads. While there are more culinary ingredients on the list, I would like to add one more, that's food coloring. Now, food coloring can be made from fruits and vegetables, although it still has to be processed. Many of them are made with synthetic ingredients. Processed culinary ingredients are often used in cooking and baking to make foods taste better and make them a little bit more appealing. The problem is that many of these ingredients can actually be overused, and a big example would be sugar and salt. Now we're getting into the category of just simply processed foods. Processed foods have undergone a little bit more processing. That could include freezing, heating, cooking, and adding preservatives. A lot of these foods still retain some of their nutritional value, so that doesn't necessarily mean that they are unhealthy. While there are certain processed foods that I probably would try to stay away from, that would be like canned fruits, canned vegetables, canned beans. These all have to go through some sort of processing, and they also have to add in preservatives in order to make sure that it doesn't go bad. One thing I want you guys to know, there's actually 2% of an ingredient that the companies do not have to list, and they're still compliant. So that just is something to be aware of when you're purchasing these packaged foods. Some more examples of processed foods would be roasted seeds and nuts, whole grain breads and pasta, yogurt, cheese, and juice. Now let's get into ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods have undergone extensive processing. Usually they contain multiple artificial ingredients and even additives. A lot of the times they're high in calories, they're high in sugar, unhealthy fats, salt, and they're also usually very low in nutrients. Some examples would be soda, sugary drinks, packaged snacks and chips, fast food items like hamburgers, pizza, frozen dinners, candy and sweets, and even processed meats like deli meat and also bacon. A lot of the times, ultra-processed foods are convenient and most likely cheaper. They've also been linked to obesity, type 2 diabetes, and also heart disease if consumed in excess. It's important to either limit these foods dramatically or just omit them from your diet. So as you can see, making sure that you're getting bare minimum, if not any, ultra-processed foods in your diet. Make sure you stick to either very minimally processed and even whole food sources in order to get the most nutrient content out of your foods. Also, read food labels. Here's a couple things to look out for in reading food labels. Check the ingredient list. You're going to be looking for any additives. This could be things like preservatives, artificial flavors, and colors. Usually, the longer the list of ingredients, the more processed the product is. Look at the nutrition facts. Look at the amount of added sugars, unhealthy fats, and sodium. Processed foods usually have a lot of these. Look for terms like partially hydrogenated, hydrogenated, bleached, refined, and enriched. All of these words usually indicate that this is a ultra-processed food. Knowledge is power, and the more you know, the better of an educated decision you can make next time you go to the grocery store.